Hello, today is Sunday, November 27th. I'm Pastor Doug of Northview Church. Thank you for giving me your kind attention. This morning in the sermon, I talked about our budget, and I said that I would be giving you more detailed information, and that's what I'm presenting to you at this time. Thank you for giving me your attention and for sharing this information with anybody in the church. Last year, our budget was $300,000. We had pledged $250,000 and we received an additional $40,000. Therefore, we were able to meet the budget. Because we have a significant number of people who contribute regularly but aren't able to pledge, whenever we consider the budget, we have to look at a combination of what's pledged and also what has been given by non-pledging contributors in years past. This year's budget for the year coming up is $325,000. That extra $25,000 is due to inflation, with utilities and everything else going up. I want to commend the Stewardship Committee on the very fine job that they did in encouraging all of us to contribute to the church. When it comes to the work of asking for money, that has limits. We can only ask for money so many ways before it turns people off and has the reverse effect. So the Stewardship Committee acted very creatively and very enthusiastically, and I'm thankful for them. The way we're set up, the United Methodist Church, the Stewardship Committee raises the money. The trustees manage the money. They oversee not only our physical property, but also our financial assets as well, like the bank account and any investments that we might have. And the Finance Committee oversees all of those funds and keeps track of it. That's the way those three committees work together in a United Methodist Church. Now, when it comes to the challenges we're facing financially, it's not unique to us. Go to the website umdata.org. It stands for UnitedMethodistData.org. And you can do an area search and you can find out how our church compares with other churches here in Roanoke County. You will find there our average worship attendance, the money we spent from year to year, the money specifically we spent on missions, the number of people in small groups, and the number of apportionments that we pay, the percentage, to support ministries in the district and in the conference. You'll find information for about a 20-year span, and by the way, all of the information relating to Northview was uploaded by Emma Nutter because that's what she does during the month of January. You can also see how we're doing in relationship to other churches and find that we're all in pretty similar boats. But when it comes to making our budget, if we don't have enough money that's pledged, then we've got one of two options, and both of them come at a cost. The first one involves using our reserves. We've got $75,000 in reserves, and we can use those to help us make the budget in the new year, assuming we have some contributions from regular contributors, but that would take almost all of our reserves by the end of December of next year. The other equally problematic thing is to make significant cuts in the budget overall. This was the case when I came here as your pastor. There were certain line items that were just slashed. For instance, school supplies for the children's Sunday school and the bread and juice for the communion elements. We had individuals who reached into their own pocket to cover these expenses. That's problematic for two ways. For one, if people know they have to pay for certain budget items because the church's budget as a whole isn't going to include them, that can reduce the amount of money they contribute to the church, and it gives us a less accurate idea of the total resources that we have to work with. The other thing is, when it comes to things like school supplies for children or the elements for communion, that should not be anyone's pet project. It should be the commitment of the church as a whole. So both of those options are not good options for us to consider. Now, one of the main budget items that was cut or our apportionments. This is money that we pay to support ministries in the district and in the conference. Each church is allotted a portion of the total budget that involves a formula that takes our budget from over a year ago. Our budget from then is considered to calculate what a fair portion of what we pay to the district and conference would be. Now, these ministries are all very vital. There's nothing frivolous at all about them. I realize some of us may have memories of the PTL scandals in the 1980s and gold bathroom fixtures and outrageous things like that, but there's no non-essential stuff that's covered in the district and conference apportionments. The vast majority of it, in fact, over 40% of it, involves insurance and pensions for full-time employees of the conference. That includes pastors like me, but also Emma, because she is a full-time employee of United Methodist Church. The apportionments that we tended not to pay were the items that were less than those high-ticket items. 2 weeks ago, we had the Virginia Tech Wesley Fellowship Group come and lead us in worship. I wanted them to come so that you could see what your apportionments are now supporting, because that was one of those budget items that we weren't paying all of those years. Thanks to your hard work and your dedication, this year we are on track to pay 100% of our apportionments for the first time since 2013. You are to be commended for your hard work and sacrifice. We are fully funding all of our obligations to Northview Church and to ministries throughout the Virginia Conference. Now, if we have to make serious cuts in our budget again and stop paying apportionments, that means we would be going back to where we were in 2013, and we would undo all of that good work that's gone on in the last 9 years. Now, one of the ways that the conference helps churches that are struggling paying their apportionments has to do with what happens whenever a new pastor is appointed to a church. All United Methodist pastors are appointed to serve for 1 year at a time. And every year in the late fall, the Staff Parish Relations Committee meets with that pastor. And they decide if the current pastor is either going to retire, be reappointed for another year, or move. Those are the three options that all of us face. Whenever my predecessor left, he retired. He was at the top of his earning potential, and rightly so. I had just recently been ordained, and my salary requirement was $10,000 less than my predecessor. That $10,000 also equals the amount of apportionments to the conference that Northview wasn't paying. Therefore, when I was sent to you as your pastor, that's the conference's way of saying, we know that you're struggling. Now with this pastor, you can pay him and pay your obligations to the conference as well. That's one of the ways that the conference helps churches. Therefore, as we consider what we're going to do in the new year, how much of our reserves we'll use, and how much we're going to cut, I'm afraid we'll have to consider whether or not it's time for me to move. I very much want to return to Northview for some additional years, not just one, but multiple. Northview, you have loved me and supported me on a level that exceeds every church I have ever served as a pastor. But the responsible thing for me to do here is to consider at what cost will that come. If it involves using all of our resources just so we can meet our budget through the following year, that's a high price to pay. And if it means that we're going to look at budget cuts that take us back to where we were in 2013, that is also a high cost to pay. So the responsible thing for me to do is to consider whether or not I might have to move because of our financial situation. Now, I need to address some rumors that are floating around Northview because it relates to this. I mentioned recently in an administrative board meeting, and then later we published it in the newsletter and on social media, that I serve on a number of committees here in the district and throughout the conference, and I'm also taking a series of classes at the request of the district superintendent. And all of that has made me extremely busy. That's led to rumors around Northview Church that I am being groomed for some other appointment somewhere else. That is not the case, and that's not how the appointment process works. The bishop's cabinet will not find another church for a pastor until the pastor and the staff parish relations committee jointly decides it is time for a move. So I'm not being groomed for anything else. I am a member of the conference, and everything we have on the local church level is duplicated on the district and conference level. That means we have committees, we have staff, and we have volunteers. The same way I depend on all of you to serve on committees and to volunteer your time to support ministries, I get calls from the DS and from people in the bishop's office wanting me to do those things too. I'm not being groomed for anything more grand because I can't imagine a better church to serve than this. That's simply a part of my obligations as a part of the conference. I know too that some of you are wondering, well, why can't the Virginia Conference just help us out or cut us a little bit of slack? Well, because collectively, the conference's resources aren't what they used to be either. Back in my parents' and grandparents' generation, people attended church regularly and donated it very strongly, very strongly with their finances. And so that built up reserves. Those reserves have been whittled away over time. The conference has a reserve fund, kind of their own rainy day fund. That was just decreased by half because the Virginia Conference's portion in a settlement with a lawsuit involving the Boy Scouts of America was just under $1 million. And that cut our reserves in half. So unfortunately, the conference doesn't have the resources to help us either. I want you to understand exactly what I am saying. I do not want to leave Northview, and I may not necessarily have to move in the coming year or two. But whether or not I do now depends on our financial situation. I know that I am beloved here, and I certainly love you. And I know that our collective ministry has been fruitful. You are to be commended on your fine work because our success has as much to do with you as it does with me. But if we are in a current financial situation where reserves will be exhausted or deep cuts will be made to the budget, then I have to consider whether or not it might be my time to move. That way, you would have another pastor who would have a lower salary than I would. It also gives us the possibility of selling the parsonage. If we did that, the money can be taken and invested through the Methodist Foundation. There are various means available to us that could generate enough interest so the interest alone would pay for a housing allowance for a new pastor because only the interest can be used in that kind of an investment. So that's where we are now, and here's our timeline. Thursday night, the Finance Committee will meet. They will review all of our figures, look at what we got from the Stewardship Committee, from the campaign, but also the budget for the coming year, and what, if anything, can potentially be cut. And then after we have those figures in hand, we'll have a better sense of how secure we are financially going into the new year. And after that information is in, I will meet with the Staff Parish Relations Committee a week from Monday on December the 5th, and we will decide whether or not my return is too great of a financial burden on this church. So that's where we are. This is not my way of threatening anybody or trying to cajole you. I am simply being open and transparent as you have known me to always be, but to make sure that you have as much information as you need to know how we are doing as a church. The Staff Parish Relations Committee will meet a week from Monday. Between now and the Finance Committee meeting, there are 3 things that you can do. First, Make sure that you are current with your current contributions to the church, that you've contributed everything you plan to give this year. Second, if you have pledged for the following year, then thank you for that. If not, let us know if you can. If you can't, but you have an approximate idea of how much you're going to contribute, contact Paula Lesko so that she can have an idea, and that helps us in our planning. And once you have met your obligation for this year, and once you have met it for next year in terms of what you pledge, you can give a special one-time gift. Anything beyond your pledge that you give now can go towards that $75,000, and that gives us a bigger cushion going into the new year. Those are the things that you can do to help us be on a better footing financially going into the new year. And that will inform me, and that will inform the Staff Parish Relations Committee in our work together. Please share this information with as many people in the church as you can. Share the videos on Facebook and YouTube, and also our church's prayer line, whose number will be posted below, is there for people that do not have internet access. You are welcome to talk to me if you have any questions or feedback about any of that, and you are welcome to talk to Paula Lesko with the Stewardship Committee, Dan Shelton with the trustees, Tom Tankersley with Staff Parish Relations Committee, and Donna Smith with the Finance Committee. Thank you so much for your commitment to Northview Church. Let's see what we can do and then determine what the new year has in store for us. And now, in conclusion, join me in saying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.